Okay, be honest with me for a second. You've done this. You're walking to your car, it's late, the parking garage is empty, and somewhere between the elevator and your parking space, your body just quietly decides that something is wrong. You didn't hear anything. Nothing happened. But your keys are now threaded between your knuckles, your walk got about 15% faster, and you are extremely aware of the space behind your shoulders. Then you get in the car, lock the door, and feel faintly ridiculous. Nothing was there, nothing is ever there, except something was there. For 4 million years, something was absolutely there. Strip the garage away. No concrete, no strip lighting, no car. It's 50,000 years ago. It's the same darkness. And you are a soft, slow, hairless thing standing in the open, with no lock to get behind. That feeling in the garage, the one you just laughed off, is the only reason you exist. It's the oldest inheritance you've got. It's older than language, so here's the question almost nobody thinks to ask properly, because we're too busy laughing at ourselves for checking the back seat. What did ancient humans actually fear most? Not what should they have feared. What did they actually lie awake at night, staring at the dark, genuinely afraid of? Because the honest answer is not the one you're expecting. It's not the leopard. And once you know what it really was, you're going to recognize it immediately, because it's the exact thing that made your stomach drop the last time you had to speak in front of a room. Let's go. Let's start with the obvious answer, the one your gut is already shouting, and let's give it full credit, because it's genuinely correct. They feared getting eaten, and they had every reason to. We've covered before that the ground at night belongs to leopards and hyenas, and that big cats hunt primates the way you order takeout. That's real. That's not a metaphor. But here's what's fascinating. Your body doesn't seem to rank the leopard first. There's a much smaller, much lower-tech thing that your nervous system takes more seriously than almost anything else on Earth. Snakes. And I know how that sounds. But look at what your visual system is doing without asking you. Show people a grid of photos, flowers, mushrooms, frogs, and one snake, and the snake gets found faster, reliably. Show it small, show it partly hidden, show it in the corner of your eye where you can barely resolve detail, and the snake still gets found faster. Young children do it. People who have never seen a snake in their lives do it. Your eyes are running a background process, all day, every day, scanning for a specific shape you have almost certainly never been threatened by. There's a hypothesis about this that I find genuinely wild. It's called the snake detection theory, and the argument goes that primates didn't just happen to get good eyes, that snakes, as the very first serious predator of small mammals, were one of the pressures that built primate vision in the first place. That the reason you can see the way you do, the reason you have this forward-facing, detail-obsessed, motion-sensitive visual system is partly because something long and legless was hunting your ancestors for tens of millions of years, and the ones who spotted it a half second earlier had children. Now, that's a hypothesis, not a settled fact, and I'll come back to being honest about the wobbly parts of all this later. But the detection effect itself is solid. Whatever built it, your eyes are looking for snakes right now, while you watch this, in your house, where there are no snakes. And that gives you the first real clue about how fear actually works. And it's not what people assume. Ancient fear is not a list of dangerous things. It's a set of preloaded shapes. Your brain came out of the box with a few very specific templates, and they are not the things that actually kill you today. Cars kill enormous numbers of people. So do stairs. So do the small electrical sockets in every wall in your home. Nobody has a phobia of sockets. Nobody wakes up sweating about stairs. But a spider the size of a raisin can clear a room of adults. And that ratio, harmless thing, enormous fear, lethal thing, total indifference, is the single biggest fingerprint the ancient world left on your nervous system. You are not afraid of what's dangerous. You are afraid of what was dangerous, for long enough, a very long time ago. Which brings us to the second thing on the list, and it's the one every single person watching this has felt: the dark. Except, and this is the part people get wrong, they weren't afraid of the dark. Darkness is nothing. Darkness is an absence. You cannot be hurt by an absence. What your ancestors were afraid of was much more specific and much more sensible. They were afraid of not knowing. Darkness is the state in which your best sense stops working while everyone else's keeps going. It's the one condition where the leopard can see you and you cannot see the leopard. So the fear isn't of the dark. The fear is of the information gap. Your ancestors weren't scared of the night. They were scared of being outmatched in it. And that's why the fear doesn't switch off in your bedroom, where nothing is hunting you. Because the trigger was never a leopard. The trigger is the gap. That's the same reason a noise in your house at 2 in the morning is so much worse than the same noise at 2 in the afternoon. Identical sound, completely different animal listening to it. Third on the list, falling. And this one has an experiment attached that I love, because it's so simple it's almost rude. In the 1960s, researchers built what they called a visual cliff. It's a table with a sheet of strong glass over half of it, and a checkered pattern that suddenly drops away underneath the glass, so it looks like a hole in the floor. It's completely safe. You could park a car on it. Then they put babies on the shallow side and had their mothers call them from across the drop. And a lot of the babies would crawl right up to the edge, look down, look at their mother, and stop. Not because anyone had taught them about heights. Not because they'd ever fallen. Something about that visual drop was already loaded before they'd been alive long enough to learn it. Now, the finding is more nuanced than the pop version. It has a lot to do with when a baby starts crawling and how much they've moved around, but the core of it stands. A drop is one of the shapes we come pre-installed with. There's one more in the starter pack, and it's the one nobody thinks of as fear at all, because we gave it a different name: disgust. Think about the last thing that made you physically recoil: rotten meat, a smell coming from a drain, something furry growing on food at the back of the fridge, that full body no, the curled lip, the head turning away, the involuntary gag. That is not a preference. That's a defense system, and it's older than your ability to reason about germs by a factor of about 1,000,000. Because here's the problem your ancestors had. They could see a leopard, they could not see the thing living in the meat. Infection was invisible, and it killed constantly, and there was no way to fight it once it was inside you. So evolution did the only thing it could. It made you refuse to put it in your mouth in the first place. It's not a cure, it's a bouncer. And the tells it uses are the same ones today. The smell of decay, the wrong color, the wrong texture, an open wound, another person visibly sick. Your body pattern matches, throws the switch, and you recoil before your conscious mind gets a vote. And you can feel how ancient it is by how badly it's calibrated for now. You know, intellectually, that a sealed packet of food a day past its date is fine. Your body does not care. You know a hospital is clean. Your body still doesn't want to touch the handrail. Disgust is a smoke alarm that was installed before anyone invented the smoke detector, and it has never once been updated. And honestly, it's still doing a decent job. So snakes, the dark, the drop, and the invisible thing in the meat. That's the starter pack. And you'd think that's the answer. And you'd close the video, and you'd be wrong. Because none of these is the thing that actually killed them. Here's where everything you assume about the ancient world gets quietly dismantled, and it starts with a simple question nobody asks. What actually did kill ancient humans? Not what scared them, what killed them. And when you go and look, when you look at the fossil record, the injuries, the healed and unhealed bones, the leopard is not the leading cause of death. Nothing with fangs is at the top of that list. The single most dangerous animal in your ancestors' world was another human. At a place called Nataruk, in Kenya, on the shore of what was once a lagoon, researchers found the remains of a group of people from roughly 10,000 years ago. Men, women, including a woman who was pregnant, and children. And the injuries on those bones are not hunting accidents. Crushed skulls, broken hands, projectile wounds. A group of people who were, by every appearance, killed by another group of people in one event and left where they fell. And Nataruk is not alone. At Jebel Sahaba, in the Nile Valley, there's a cemetery many thousands of years old, where a striking number of the people buried there have projectile injuries. And, tellingly, a lot of them have healed ones too, which suggests this wasn't one catastrophic afternoon, but something that happened again and again across lifetimes. Otzi, the man who came out of the ice in the Alps, spent 5,000 years with an arrowhead in his shoulder that nobody noticed until an X-ray found it. He didn't die of the cold, he was killed, and the cold just kept the receipt. And notice what all of that implies, because it's the actually chilling part. A leopard is a solved problem. Climb a tree, build a fire, stay in a group, and the leopard has to go and find something easier. There is no equivalent move against people. You can't outclimb them. They climb. You can't outfire them. They have fire. You can't outgroup them because they have a group too, and theirs might be bigger. Every single defense your species had invented, the other group already had, because they were you. Read that again, because it reframes everything. The most sophisticated predator your ancestors ever faced was the only animal on Earth that could plan, that could remember a grudge, that could coordinate with 9 of its friends, wait for you to be asleep, and know exactly how you think, because it thinks the same way. A leopard is dangerous. A leopard is not planning anything. The other group over the ridge is planning. Now, I promised honesty, and this is exactly where the honesty is required, because this topic is a minefield of confident nonsense in both directions. You will hear people say that prehistoric life was constant, total war, that we've always been killers and it's just our nature. And you will hear the exact opposite, that ancient humans lived in peaceful harmony until farming and property ruined everything. Both of those are stories, and both of them are being sold to you by someone with a point to prove. Here's what's actually true. Nadaruk exists, and it's horrifying, and the interpretation of it is genuinely contested. Some researchers have argued the injuries are less clear-cut than the headline said. The overall rates of prehistoric violence are argued over constantly, because the sample size is tiny, the preservation is patchy, and one massacre site does not give you a murder rate for a continent. What we can say, with some confidence, is that human-on-human violence was present. It was serious enough to leave a mark on the bones we found, and it was not rare enough to ignore. That's it. That's the honest version. Anyone giving you a precise percentage for how violent the Stone Age was is doing arithmetic on a rumor. But here's the thing, and this is where it gets genuinely strange. Even granting all that uncertainty, the deepest fear your ancestors carried wasn't the other group. It wasn't the leopard, and it wasn't the dark, and it wasn't a spear coming over the ridge. The thing they feared most was being told to leave. I want you to actually sit in that for a second. Picture the worst possible day in an ancient human's life. It isn't the leopard. The leopard is quick. The worst day is the one where the group has a conversation about you, and then somebody tells you that you're not part of this anymore, and you walk out alone with no fire, no group, no one to watch while you sleep, no one to feed you if you break a leg. That's not a punishment. That's an execution with a delay built in. Because a human alone is a dead human. Everything that makes you formidable, the fire, the shared knowledge, the fact that someone carries you when you're hurt, the fact that someone is always awake, every single one of those things is a group feature. Alone, you're just a slow ape with a big head and no claws. Exile wasn't a social inconvenience. Exile was the death penalty, dressed up as a conversation. And evolution, being what it is, did not leave that to chance. It didn't politely suggest you stay on good terms with your group. It wired the threat of exclusion into the same alarm system as physical injury. There's a famous set of experiments where people play a simple ball-tossing game on a computer with what they believe are 2 other players. After a while, the other 2 just stop throwing them the ball. That's it. That's the entire cruelty. It's a meaningless game, with strangers, that the person will never see again. And it hurts. People report real distress from being left out of a pointless computer game for 3 minutes. Brain imaging found activity in regions that also light up with physical pain, a finding that's been argued about since, and I'd be overstating it to tell you social pain and a broken arm are literally the same thing. But the direction of travel is clear, and you already know it's true, because you've lived it. Being left out doesn't feel like a disappointment. It feels like an injury. Your body treats it as damage. That's not a design flaw. That's a smoke alarm. Your ancestors needed to feel exclusion as physical agony, because in their world, exclusion was a physical threat. The ones who felt a mild, "oh well, they don't like me," and wandered off alone did not become anyone's ancestors. The ones who felt a stab of pure animal panic at the first sign of being pushed out, who immediately, desperately started repairing things, those are the ones who got to eat tomorrow. You are descended from the anxious ones. You are the child of the people who could not stop caring what the group thought. And once you see exile as the death penalty, one more piece of you suddenly makes sense. The thing you do constantly and would never call survival behavior. You care, obsessively, about what people say about you when you're not in the room. Because how does exile actually happen? Nobody gets thrown out of a group by a leopard. You get thrown out by a conversation, by a reputation, by enough people quietly agreeing, over enough evenings, that you take more than you give, that you don't share, that you can't be relied on when it matters. Reputation was not vanity. Reputation was the ledger that decided whether you got fed in the lean season. It was, functionally, your credit score for staying alive. which is why gossip isn't a character flaw of the species. It's arguably one of its core technologies. It's how a group of people who can't all watch each other at once keeps track of who's carrying their weight. And it's why a rumor about you can still make your face go hot decades after the savannah. Your body files "people are talking about me" under the same heading it has always filed it: possible eviction, possible death. And now you know exactly why your palms sweat when you stand up in front of a room. Because that's what public speaking is. Read the situation honestly. You are standing alone, in the open, while the entire group looks at you and silently evaluates whether you're worth keeping. Your body has no category for quarterly update. It only has one category for that arrangement of facts, and it's 4 million years old, and it's screaming that you are one bad performance away from being cast out to die. Your heart rate isn't wrong. It's just working from a very old map. Now, you have probably heard the line that people fear public speaking more than death, usually with a joke about how at a funeral you'd rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. Great joke. Terrible statistic. That claim comes from surveys where people were asked to check off things they were afraid of, and public speaking got checked more often than death did. That's not the same as saying people would rather die. Nobody in that study was offered the choice. It's a real finding that got squeezed into a much better story, and the better story is the one that survived, which honestly is a pretty good demonstration of how myths work. But strip the bad statistic away, and something real is still standing underneath it. The fear of the group's judgment is enormous. It is disproportionate. It is physical. It makes competent adults shake, and it is doing that because it is not a fear of speaking. It's the fear of exile, wearing a lanyard. So let's bring all of this together, because the shape of the answer is now visible. Your ancestors feared snakes, and the dark, and the drop, and they were right to. Those are the reflexes, the fast stuff, the hardware. Below that, they feared the other group, because the other group could think. But underneath all of it, the thing that ran deepest, the fear that shaped more of your daily behavior than any leopard ever did, was the fear of being alone, of being unwanted, of the group deciding, quietly, that you were surplus. Every other fear on this list protects your body. That one protects the thing that keeps your body alive, your place among other people. It's the master fear. Everything else is just a subsidiary, and you can see the hierarchy in what people actually do. Frightened people do not run away from each other. They run toward each other. Every disaster, every emergency, every bad night, the instinct is to find the others. Get in the same room. Put your back against the same wall. We will happily walk toward the thing that scares us, as long as we're not walking alone. That's the tell. That's the whole answer in one behavior. And that's why it's still here, running, in a world with locks and hospitals and antibiotics. That's why a message left on red can ruin your afternoon. That's why you replayed that stupid thing you said in a group chat at 3 a.m. That's why walking into a room where you don't know anyone feels like stepping onto a stage. None of that is you being weak or oversensitive. That is a 4 million-year-old survival system, running on the exact hardware it was built for, in an environment that no longer requires it, doing its job perfectly. It cannot tell the difference between being disliked at a party and being left behind on the savannah, because for almost all of human history, there wasn't one. So come back to the parking garage with me. You, keys between your knuckles, walking a bit too fast, feeling faintly ridiculous. Here's the thing. You were right to feel it. Not because someone's there. Nobody's there. You were right because that feeling is a message from every single person you're descended from, and every one of them was afraid. And every one of them was afraid of the right things long enough to have a child. The fear isn't the flaw. The fear is the gift. It's the only part of them you actually still have. And the next time your chest tightens before you walk into a room full of people, or your stomach drops when you're left out of something small and stupid, don't be embarrassed. That's not anxiety. That's an ancestor, tapping you on the shoulder, saying stay close to them. Stay close. It's dark out there, and we don't make it alone. We never did.